Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Safiyyah, your host. We've come to the conclusion of our series, The Neglected Rights of Muslim Women. We've been looking at this book, or a series of books by Abdul Halim Abu Shuqqah. This is volume 1. And now as we reach the end of the series, we want to review what we've learned, what were the findings that we discovered, and talk about next steps. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
It's been really fun looking at this series. I've learned so much. It's been wonderful to see all of the hadith and the Quranic verses relating to women's rights in one place because they're often scattered. And I feel like this is the first series that I've seen where somebody brings them all together and draws conclusions based on them. I wonder, Dr. Shabir, what are your thoughts on this series? And what are your thoughts on our discussions about this series? What have we learned?
Yeah. So we've gone through, this is the 21st episode, I believe, now the concluding episode. So we've had a lot to say about this book over time. It's written in 8 volumes in the English translation, excellently translated by Adil Salahi, who himself is an excellent translator. He's translated many books from Arabic into English. And the book deals with, the title of our discussion shows, the neglected rights of Muslim women. And that broader topic is segmented into many smaller segments, sometimes each occupying a particular volume. Like, for example, the rights of women within a family, rights of women within a society.
Yes, they're right here, actually.
Yes. And
Muslim women's participation in social life, Muslim women's participation in professional, social, and political life, women's attire and adornment. So there are a lot of different sections to his book.
Yes. Now, there are a lot of books, Safiyyah, that propose to do specifically that. Yeah. But what is unique about Abu Shuqqah's book is that, first of all, the time and place in which he was writing, because there are modern writings, meaning in our very contemporary times. And one might say, okay, these writings or the writers are pressured by demands of modern society, especially in the West. And so we cannot take them seriously because it looks like they're just trying to placate the modern sensibility. Abu Shuqqah was writing 3 decades ago in the context of Egypt. And so that being an Islamic setting, obviously one can still lay some of these charges, but the charges would not have the same degree of force because we're talking about somebody writing within the Islamic context some 3 decades ago. Moreover, he's not just simply throwing out his own opinions. He is basing what he's saying on the Quran primarily and also on authentic narratives within the books of Hadith. Now, when we speak of authentic narratives, there are different opinions about what constitutes an authentic narrative, but it is widely agreed among Muslims that the collections of Bukhari and Muslim are the most authentic 2 collections among their counterparts. So if a hadith is found in Bukhari and Muslim, generally people take that to be authentic. I don't necessarily, but a lot of people just simply take them all. Bukhari must be correct. So Abu Shuqqah has gathered from Bukhari and Muslim some 300 or so hadiths, which he says has a bearing on the rights of women. And he recounts many of these hadiths in these books, one after another, and he shows the implications of these hadiths for the rights of women. He shows that from these hadiths, it is evident that men and women had very healthy interactions within the lifetime of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Men came to ask women questions, women came to ask men questions. Men and women could talk to each other. Sometimes people, can make a marriage proposal to another. The Quran says that if a woman is widowed, then she has this waiting period. During that time, no other man is to make a proposal to her, but he can say something by way of suggestion. And the Muslim commentators on the Quran explicating this verse say that the man could say something to her like, I find you attractive, without actually making a marriage proposal. Now, how would the man make this kind of suggestion if the women were always behind a barrier, never to be seen by men or to be talked to? With points like this, Abu Shuqqah has made a very strong case that the restrictions that we have put in Muslim societies, thinking them to be Islamic, totally separating the men from the women, this has gone overboard. He's not calling for a cessation of all caution, but he's saying that even when we talk about caution, there is a principle in Islamic law that we are to try to prevent evil. As they say, prevention is better than cure, right? So, yes, preventing evil, but he has pointed out that this can go too far as well. And if everything has to be in balance. If you emphasize too much the prevention of evil, at the same time, you might be preventing a lot of good that can result otherwise. So everything has to be placed in balance.
Dr. Shabir, at the same time as he has made a tremendous contribution to our understanding of women's rights in the Islamic tradition itself, there are some limitations in his work. I wonder if you can expound upon that a little bit more. What have you found to be ways in which you thought he could have gone further, but he didn't? He stopped short.
Yeah, perhaps not so much that he could have gone further. I recognize that everybody writes within or speaks within their time and place and circumstance, and we all have limitations because of the constraints of our social circumstances and so on. So he did what he could, but what he could was also limited. He was working within the Islamic paradigm. So because he's committed to saying, okay, the hadiths which are in Bukhari and Muslim are authentic. So if it says something positive in favor of women's rights, naturally you would highlight that. But if there is one that says something that apparently is negative when it comes to women's rights, then he would have to include that as well. Or, sometimes a hadith can cut both ways, and he has to deal with all of that. So you would have to accept the implications of those narratives as well.
And then he would end up having to justify them.
And he would have to justify that, yes. So in the case of, for example, polygamy, where a man is allowed to have multiple wives, so he would have to allow that, and without, he would offer some caution and some caveats, but on the whole, he would have to accept that as a situation. Now, the possibility that a man gives the word of divorce to his wife and thus becomes final without any judge's intervention or something like this. This is well encased in classical Islamic tradition, and so it would not have been easy for him, for Abu Shuqqah, to go out of that paradigm. And he has tried to say, okay, let the matter be registered with a judge and so on, and let the judge intervene and try to reconcile between the couple. But ultimately, if the man is uttering the divorce, then the judge will have to accept that and record it as a divorce. Moreover, in his discussion about this, he draws attention to some stipulations in classical Islamic law. You know how the man could just simply say, I divorce you, and that holds. The man could utter what is known in classical Islamic law as a conditional divorce. The man could say to his wife, if you do this,
then I divorce you?
Then you stand divorced.
Okay.
So
then you are divorced. Okay.
Yes. So if that is said, then according to many scholars, it will take effect. And so imagine a woman living under a situation where a man says, if you do this, you stand divorced. It's not something to be discussed anymore because the word has already been pronounced. You just have to make sure you avoid that thing. So limitations like this are evident in the book. In some cases, he tries to say, well, okay, scholars discuss this one aspect. Like if a man says, for example, if I fail to do this is another issue. A man might say, if I fail to do this, then my wife is divorced. So this has nothing to do with the wife herself. This is just the man's own pronouncement.
Yeah.
So many scholars see the gravity of this and they say, okay, well, as Abu Shuqqah points out, if the man didn't really intend really to pronounce divorce in this case, you should just treat this like an oath. Okay, so he failed in this oath. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. And he thus failed in his oath, and so he's a sinner in that way, but the marriage still stands. But you see the frivolity that can result from giving this to the man. And ironically, many to justify the fact that the pronouncement was given as the man's prerogative, they say, okay, the woman is too flippant, and one day she will pronounce divorce, the next day she will regret it, so we can't give her that right. We put that in the hands of the man, who is expected to be
the rational,
reasonable
right? One. Yeah.
Ultimately, obviously, the solution to this is that in an Islamic context, the Islamic law can evolve to the point where we can say, okay, every attempt at divorce or any wish to be divorced should be registered with the Islamic court. And then the Islamic court would supervise the whole process from beginning to end. And then if there is really good grounds for a divorce, then it will be granted. And if not, then the Islamic law will insist on the couple to stay together in decent living, making sure that the rights of all are protected. And so the prerogative isn't given to one or the other. But you see how the prerogative has been given to men for historic reasons, because the Quran was revealed in a certain historical context. Things were being done in a certain way. The Quran could not reverse all of life altogether. Otherwise, the Reformation could not get started if you have to pick your battles. Too much of a demand. If you raise the bar too high, nobody would jump. But you have to give them a reasonable target and say, okay, meet this target. And then later on, Islamic law can develop to raise the target higher and higher, to develop the Islamic civilization to where the Quran envisions that it should be. But nonetheless, people didn't see it this way, and they just kept everything entrenched the way it was in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when the Quran was being revealed. Abu Shuqqah has made his attempts to reform, but those attempts were limited by his time and place. And naturally, we can go further with this and make further reforms.
That's what I was going to ask you. Where do you think we need to go next?
I don't want to give any specifics now, because that will open up a whole new discussion. But I just want to say for the record that we have failed in taking it further. The Quran gave us some legislation that was appropriate to the time and place and circumstance in which it was revealed, but empowered the Muslim populace, especially through its representatives, the ulama, the scholars, to study the Quran carefully, to see its objectives, and to make sure that those objectives are being met in modern contexts. Now, when it comes to things like the woman's hijab, Abu Shuqqah has gone to great lengths to clarify that the meaning of hijab linguistically is a barrier, and as it applied in the Quran, it was a reference to a curtain that was to be drawn in the home of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to separate the private dwelling area of the women from the meeting hall in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, would deal with community affairs, meeting with all and sundry. Now, people have extended that to refer to the Muslim woman's clothing. Okay, no harm, so long as we know what we're talking about and we don't mix the definition of our terms. But then, what they conceived of as being the hijab for women in general includes often the niqab, or the face covering, which, according to Abu Shuqqah, was never intended for women in general. And if it is reported, and it is reported, that the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him, covered their faces on some occasions. Well, according to Abu Shuqqah, this is particular to the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him. They were to have this curtain between them and the populace in their homes, and when they went out of their homes, as a substitute for that curtain, they drew a cover over their faces, but they still interacted with men. But this was not for women in general. It's a very important distinction that Abu Shuqqah has made here that helps to make sense of the variety of narratives that are there, showing that on occasion some women cover their faces, which invariably are the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And if some other women copied that, it doesn't mean that it is a rule for all Muslim women, because you would need a verse of the Quran or some clear narrative from the Prophet, peace be upon him, to stipulate that. And we don't have any of these. Neither is Quran 24, verse 31, nor Surah 33, verse number 59, as we discussed in the series, would give credence to the belief that the Muslim woman has to cover her face in public. So I think these are enough, actually. These are great advances. And if we can at least popularize these advances and draw the attention of contemporary Muslim scholars to the fact that a scholar already some 3 decades ago worked this out, but it's neglected. I give kudos to the translators and publishers of the book to bring this into English translation so that it can be popularized more.
And where can we get this series, Dr. Shabir? We've got some questions about where this...
It's sold online wherever Muslim books are sold, and even where popular books are sold.
Are all the volumes readily available?
All of the volumes are available. That's where I bought one from an online bookseller. But I see that some Muslim... The publisher obviously would be the best source to absolutely guarantee that it will be available. And I think it's Cube Publishing.
Yes,
Cube Publishing.
CubePublishing.com.
Yes. And may I make a suggestion about how this book might be improved in a second or third edition, or how a spin-off from this might be possible? So one of the things I noticed in this book is there's a lot of repetition, because Abu Shuqqah is dealing with hadiths, and hadiths by their very nature, when you go to Bukhari or Muslim or whatever, especially Bukhari, you would find that the hadith deals with 2 or 3 different issues. So Imam Bukhari would include that hadith under 2 or 3 different headings, each one specific to that particular issue, but it's the same hadith. Now, to find that in Bukhari, which is the source book, that is fine. We know how to use that. Now, to find it in a book of continuous discussion like Abu Shuqqah's book, it's a little bit disconcerting, because it's like deja vu. Didn't I read this hadith already?
Yes.
So it would be good to reorganize the book in such a way that you first list all of the hadiths and say, okay, these are the hadiths that deal with women's issues. And for each one, you spell out the implications. So when you go to another one that has the same implication, you can just say implication number 1, 2, or you could say hadith number 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 200. And, you're dealing with a certain implication. You can say hadith number 5, 7, and 23 all deal with this issue, and so on. It's a different way of referencing the material rather than repeating the hadith all over again, even partially, because it just feels
yes, the series feels a bit long.
Yes,
I have to say,
longer than needed. The second thing I would suggest is and
as a result, it was difficult to review it too, because we were trying to go step by step, but then we found that things are repetitious.
And we wanted to avoid repetition ourselves, which was difficult. I
think we did end up being repetitious as well.
Yes, it's inevitable, I believe. The other thing that I found lacking is the reference to the source where the hadith can be found. Of course, it'll be said in brief, this is Bukhari, this is Muslim, and so on. But we would like page number or chapter reference or something like this, so that we can go locate, especially if we want to know the exact Arabic. Here are the English translated words, but what does it say in the actual Arabic? Can we go and see the whole hadith within the sources, within Bukhari and Muslim, for example? And this was difficult, because to go and search for the English words within the search engines to bring back the original Arabic takes a little bit of extra effort. So that's how a second edition of this translation can be improved, by giving the references to those particular hadith. And as a spin-off from this, there have been collections of 40 hadiths about this and 40 hadiths about that. Why not 40 hadiths about the rights of women? And in fact...
maybe that's something that you could work on.
Somebody might do that even before me. Now, the suggestion is out there, and may God guide somebody to do the good work, whether it is me or someone else.
Yes. May Allah reward him for all of his work. It's pretty groundbreaking, and I was really happy to have come across it and studied it.
Yes, and now, of course, we have to implement the good things that he has guided us towards.
Hopefully we will. Thank you for that, Dr.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Media Hub, the new home of Let the Quran Speak.
Here we spread positivity and good. We help people experience the beauty of Islam and help them appreciate and understand Muslims.
This beautiful building we purchased at cost $2.3 million.
Yeah, we've already raised a third of that money, and with your help, inshallah, we can pay off the rest.
So we're looking for people who can give $1,000 each. If you can be part of the select group, that's amazing.
Otherwise, just please give whatever wherever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help us continue this good work.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be a benefit to the Muslim community long after Safiyyah and I are gone.
Please support our work at muslimmediahub.com.
Your support is zakat eligible and tax deductible.
May Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.